Be informed, be inspired. Join us for the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show. Tune in and listen for both modern and ancient wisdom on all things maternity, parenting and sacred women's business, right here on the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show.
Welcome to Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond, presented by 99.9 Bay FM and going across Australia on the Community Radio Network. We honour a woman's right to choice, her body, her baby, their birth. We hope to inspire and inform you, our sisterhood and families, through the thresholds of birth and your unique journey to parenthood. And you're here with me, Sally Cusack. In this episode, we're speaking about adolescence and the incredible challenges of that time, but also what's available to us as those who have passed through the period, things that we can do to support each other as parents and support our adolescents, and also to support those in the community you know who are currently in the midst of that challenge in their family. We're hearing an interview with father, psychologist and author of Parenting for a Peaceful World and Heart-to-Heart Parenting, Robin Grille. The teen years are a time of huge change and transformation, and for many of us who have left those years well behind us, we seek to protect our children, our adolescents from this period, but really it has an important role to play and we need to provide a safe container for that period to play out. I asked Robin Grille about the role of adolescence. Why do we have to go through such a difficult period? And he starts with defining adolescence. He prefers to refer to the period as adolescence rather than teenage years.
Why I like to use the term adolescence instead of teens, because teen stops at the end of 19. Teens just refers to a number. Adolescence is a really distinct stage of a psychological development, emotional development. It's longer than the teens. And, it encompasses the teens, but it's a bit more. And it's distinct because there are some very, very clear and different things going on in the development of the human brain at that time, which begins around, roughly, give or take, around age 12. There's a lot of disorganizing of the brain and some very, very rapid regrowth. But that tends to settle down into the 20s, 23, 24, 25 years of age, around that period. So there's a reason why, from 12 to 24, 25 is a distinct kind of stage of development and some very clear different things going on in the brain. So that's my word for that, adolescence. There's definitely an evolutionary role that for that most intense and turbulent time that I like to call adolescence. There's a great significance in that and a purpose for human community. Just briefly to introduce some of what the evolutionary role of adolescence is there's three things I can say to that. One is that adolescents tend to be disruptors of society at a time when we need to let go of old cultural structures. And no wonder that's a difficult time and there's friction. But I want to talk to why that is actually a huge benefit to society without making light of how difficult and sometimes even perilous that process can be. And then, of course, I want to say lots about what we, how we respond, how we can respond and be guides as elders to help our young to contain that really, really super intense energy that they carry and to make it safe. And they have a healing kind of a potential for us as well, because by doing what they do in that really wild time of life is that they press a lot of our buttons, and it's not random the buttons they press. For each of us as parents and elders, the The buttons that are pressed for us, the hardest buttons, are the places where we've still got unfinished business from our own time of life when we were adolescents. So really, our greatest place of reactivity, whether we overreact or we underreact and become kind of ignoring or abandoning, those are signals that to each of us that's a place that needs healing. So they bring us these huge opportunities, and powerfully so, to heal a lot of our own stuff. And if we then decide to take that journey in a dynamic and compassionate way for ourselves, we all benefit. It's not just about helping them. In a way, our children, our adolescent children, are growing us up. So we grow as they grow. I want to say that doesn't mean that we just let it all go as is. So, of course, we want to protect our young people. And adolescence is such a emotionally turbulent time. So it's not the case that I'm suggesting anything like permissiveness. There's occasionally you hear people say boys will be boys, girls will be girls, let it be. And, I do want to say there's potential danger in that. The purpose really for why I think it's so important to really look into the universality of the kinds of issues that come up in adolescence, and why did human evolution over billions of years so carefully fashion that into the human story, is that it starts to give us some very, very helpful aha about why it all happens as it does, and as well as what we can do as elders to be helpful. So at best, look, I think that to understand the evolutionary purpose of adolescence, as well as what's going on in the adolescent brain, is that it really helps it helps to settle us down as parents and elders. And it means that when we do have to intervene, it helps us to intervene with our children, our young, without the same kind of anxiety, the same kind of perhaps judgment in our tone. And it makes us people that they're more willing to listen to if we're coming from a place of deep understanding of where they're at, and I have to say where we were all at when we were at that age.
Robin Grille, who I'm interviewing here, identifies several particular unique challenges for the adolescents of this particular time in history, but also the universality of the experience.
Because some of the challenges that exist now are entirely unprecedented. There's not been anything like it in human history. So in one sense, we're needing to redraw one part of the map. At the core, the main challenges are the same challenges that have always been there, because it's a biologically determined stage of development. So we all have it. It doesn't matter what period of history you were born. It doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, what country you're born in, what your culture is. That at a very core level, we all do, through this incredible intensification of issues to do with belonging and what's our identity in the tribe, and a very powerful surge of sexual desire and energy, understanding about partnering up with people that we're attracted to, and having boundaries, and all of those things will always be there as long as there are human beings. Closer to the surface, there are dangers that are particular to our time in terms of and there's so many to list, the hyper overabundance of everything, of foods that are completely unhealthy, of screens, of conversations on the screen that we can completely get lost in. The danger of that is how it takes away from the incredibly important learning how to relate to one another is a skill that, like every other skill in the world, like playing the piano, it requires practice. And disappearing into a screen without any of the normal cues of reading each other's body language or listening to each other's tone of voice, that it's impossible on a screen. The hyper availability of drugs, so that the drugs have actually escaped from the sacred. They're no longer a part of a initiation kind of ritual taken care of by medicine people. It's something that is hyper available. And everything else, there's cars. There are, of course, dangers that we all face together, elders and adolescents together, which are environmental. We're in such a precarious moment in history right now. There's never been a time in history where all of humanity faces this one singular danger in terms of environmental catastrophe. And our young people have every right to be incredibly worried about that and to be asking us, what we are doing to them through the way that we treat Mother Nature. So, that is more to do with the things that are particular to the time in which we live now. But the essence of how we communicate and how we listen, that transcends all time.
You're listening to the Pregnancy, Birth and Beyond show. You're here with me, Sally Cusack. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a privilege to be able to share with you every week information that we hope really helps your lives as parents and as members of a community with parents and children in it. We've been hearing from Robin Grille, who's a Sydney-based psychologist and author. You may have come across his books before, Parenting for a Peaceful World and Heart-to-Heart Parenting. In this part of our interview, he addresses in particular the issue of shame and why he thinks it's so important to pay a particular focus on shame, how to detect it, and why it needs extra special care.
First of all, I don't think, for as much as we want to, we sometimes desperately want to protect our children from painful emotions, we continually face helplessness around that because we can't. The world is so much larger than what we are. And, as our kids reach adolescence, we become a smaller part of the entire environment that is their influence. But protecting them from emotion isn't anywhere near as important as equipping them with really dynamic and powerful ways to navigate emotion when it does come up. Because all painful and ecstatic emotions are basically inevitable. It's really showing them what they can do when the storm comes. And I do want to address shame in particular because it's kind of the sleeper in the room. It's harder to detect, and because we tend to hide when we're feeling ashamed, and to hide our shame from each other. So, but it ends up being an incredibly poisonous place to be. There are terribly shaming influences all around us, the comparison and the grading that goes on in school. Half of the kids that basically not designed to be the kind of people that excel in the narrow numeracy literacy kind of bandwidth that our educational sort of fetish provides for them today. A lot of young people feel really disempowered in the classroom. Australia just keeps on going further and further back with this assault on our young. Instead of helping them to follow their bliss and their passion, we just bury them under homework and exams and largely things that they don't particularly care about and have no relationship to who they are as individuals. So that's in so many ways an intrinsically shaming environment for quite a few of the kids. And then there's the horrific image-based exploitation that comes from the advertising industry that just rampantly bombards every screen with how kids are supposed to look and act. That is that's a poisonous kind of an input. So right there, And we can't just close that window.